Your life, Dibanshu.
Right. Thank you. So good afternoon and namaskar to all of you, our dear colleagues and friends across textiles business. We are extremely thankful and grateful to Thomas for readily agreeing to our request to hold a session on his ABG journey spanning across almost 3 decades. We hope in course of his presentation, followed by question and answer session, we will get to learn a lot, but even more important than that, draw inspiration from his experiences, which in due course we can also apply in our careers. With this, I request Thomas to take over from me. Thomas.
Am I live, Shritapa?
Yes, yes.
So, good morning and good afternoon to people joining from different parts of the world. It is indeed a privilege and an honor for me to be able to interact with all of you on this theme of my career journey. It's actually my career journey and not only the journey of ABG, which of course is a very significant part of my life's work journey. So let's move on to this next slide, Devanshu. This is a very busy slide, and therefore, I don't know how many of you can really see it, but I will go through each phase of my career so that I can tell you what were the learnings in it for me from different phases in my own life. I started my career after IIT, passing out of IIT in 1982. I passed out in March, and I joined at that time. One of the best management training schemes in the country used to be the DCM Senior Management Training Scheme. In fact, many of you may not know this was a leading industrial house, and it used to be the company which launched the first management training scheme. And it started with the old ICS officers who were ex-ICS officers who were looking after it. So it preceded the IIMs and it preceded TAS also. That's the Tata Administrative Service. So when I was passing out of IIT, this was the most prestigious job that I was aspiring for, and I was lucky enough to land this job. So during this process of working with SRF Limited, which was a very progressive company of DCM. Incidentally, many of you who are familiar with educational institutions should know that Lady Shriram College of Commerce, Hindu College, all these colleges are actually run by the DCM Trust. So it had a very key role to play even in education, particularly for people who were based in the north of India. So my career in DCM spanned a 2-year stint of training, followed by placement in SRF. And in SRF, I worked with them in 3 locations. I worked with them as an executive assistant to the managing director, as an EA. I worked as a regional manager, and I also worked as a product manager. It was a journey from 1982 to 1990, 8 years, 3 locations, and my whole focus of learning was basically to learn multiple functions, to gain as much experience I can about various aspects of marketing and selling. So as a regional manager, I was doing both sales and marketing. As a product manager, I really understood the importance of product management and the marketing management associated with that. And of course, as an executive assistant to an MD was a great learning process, which probably made me what I am today. I worked with one of the best bosses that I've ever worked with in my career, and I learned so much from him. But what is it that characterized this phase of my life? It was basically just putting my head down and learning as much as I could. And everything I sought for learning. So these 8 years of my life passed very quickly, and I kept pushing my bosses to change my roles. So I pushed my MD to move me as a regional manager, And it was a little scary because, you know, I was replacing a guy who was 58 years old, who had worked with many FMCG companies, and I had no experience of, forget about sales or marketing, of managing a large region. But I took it in my stride and I learned, and I was able to make a difference over a period of time. Then I pushed my boss, who was the CMO, to move me into the plant, which was in Chennai, and learned a lot about product management, learned a lot about coordination with the plant, but did not stay in the plant. I was still used to spend 2-3 days every week in the plant, but was based out of Chennai in the main office of as part of the marketing team's presence in Chennai. What did this do for me? You know what it did for me in 8 years of working. One of the things I never looked at, and of course, you know, those days these job bands or designations were not as critical, but yes, everyone was bothered about money. And while I had got married, I had 2 children, I never focused at all on the money part of it. I focused on the learning part of it. And this stood me in good stead because in 1990, when Indian Organic Chemicals, which was one of India's leading producers of polyester fiber and polyester filament, were looking for a very senior person to head marketing for them, they met up with me, and I was able to get that job. And I think the reason I got the job was because I had put in a lot of efforts to learn every aspect of marketing and sales. And they were quite impressed that even despite my young age, they found that I had enough knowledge to deliver a job. And all my colleagues who were the vice presidents at that time were all upwards of 52, 53 years of age. And I was quite young at that time. The next 6 years were a great learning for me because Indian Organic Chemicals, while it was one of the oldest producers of polyester, was an extremely innovative company. So the key learning for me was innovation in this stint of my life. And of course, managing a very large marketing organization on my own, which is the first time I was doing it. We were the first to produce recycled polyester we are talking about in the 90s, early 90s, whereas in India, it really came to be only in the mid 2010, 8, 10 that people really started doing it. So we were about a decade and a half early in this business. We were the first to import PET bottles, X-ray films, video films from United States. They used to come in barges. You know, Greenpeace was after us because we were picking up junk from the US East Coast and West Coast and shipping it to India. But it was also a great period of learning because no producer in the world, and Wellman was the largest producer of recycled polyester, were willing to part with technology. So we actually put up a plant and made our own technology, developed technology in-house as to how to, how to remove every element of a PET bottle or an X-ray film or a video film to convert it into a usable polyester chips, and then use vented extruders to use the chips to make fiber, eventually use the vented extruded chips to use in our polymer plant and actually end up making a very good polyester fiber. We were the first ones to make PET bottle grade chips in Asia, and we were definitely the first, amongst the first few companies in the world to make PET bottle preforms for Pepsi. We entered into a joint venture with Chemtex and Pepsi, and we started producing PET preforms for the bottle industry, for the beverage bottling industry. So my learnings at Indian Organic were about innovation, about really about making very difficult outcomes happen, and of course also opened my eye to the international market, where I started traveling very often. This was followed when Mr. Lohia started Indorama in 1993-94. 94, I think his first CP got commissioned in 94. He came into the market against stiff competition from Reliance. And I think the mandate before us was a very difficult mandate. In 50 years' time, we had a market of about 22,000 tons per month kind of market. And this 22,000 tons was to increase to 40,000 tons in terms of actual supply capability. So this was going to be a very, very big change with Indorama putting up CP2 and CP3, which was going to add another 10,000 tons of fiber or filament or chips, and Reliance also putting up its Hazira plant and putting up similar capacities of 10,000-11,000 tons. So to anyone looking at it from outside, how do you convert a market of 22,000 tons a month to a market of 42,000 tons a month within a couple of months? Because the moment my CP2 and CP3 started, it would be producing at the record capacity that it's meant to produce, 340 to 360 tons per day. But we took this challenge, and Indorama was a little handicapped because it worked directly with mills, unlike Reliance, which worked through a large network of agents across the country. Most people wrote off Indorama and said that they'll never be able to succeed. But I'm really happy that, with the support of everyone, and I built up the team from zero base, we were able to not just succeed, we were the first in the market with our 10,000 tons, in addition to the 2,000 we already had. So we were putting 12,000 tons in a market and of a 22,000 ton market, and with the sheer stint of pricing and competing with viscose, we were able to take share away from viscose, share away from cotton, and we were able to create a sustainable market of 40,000 tons. Reliance came a little later, and they were also able to put eventually their 10,000 tons into the market. And what we thought was impossible, that a market of 22,000 tons rapidly grew to become a market of 40,000 tons a month. And for me, the greatest learning was that what is impossible is not always impossible, it can be done. And I took that away from me as my learning of this stint. It was also a very stressful period because there was huge competition. We were new in this business. We had to acquire new customers. We had to also solve the problem of, we had a lot of problems from CP1 days before I joined of unpaid outstandings. So one of my jobs as the Chief Marketing Officer of Indorama was to do collections. And that is why I always smile when we talk about, we have the overdue collections meeting, because I spent a good amount of my time talking to the owners of spinning companies, sometimes starting at 6:37 in the morning, only for payment follow-up. And how important that is, and how important it is to ensure that your payment terms are secured, because it can take away a lot of energies from you, which could be more gainfully deployed in other marketing activities. The stint of Indorama gave me a lot of confidence about our ability to compete and our ability to create markets and to expand pies from wherever they were at one point in time. It was around this time that Mr. Birla was looking for somebody to resurrect the falling fortunes of the pulp and fiber business. For most of you who do not know, pulp and fiber business is the flagship business of the ABG Group. Grasim was the company which was the cash cow, and it was generating all the cash for all the investments both overseas and in India. In fact, for almost half a decade, Grasim remained the only company contributing cash. And unfortunately, in 1994, I think this coincided with the expansion of polyester, the fortunes of pulp and fiber really went down, and the plants started struggling to compete because viscose was a much costlier raw material as compared to cotton and polyester. And I was headhunted by Mr. Birla at that point in time to turn around the pulp and fiber business, which was going south. In fact, in Nagda, out of 9 lines, only 4 lines were working. In Harihar, 2 lines were not fully working. We had invested a huge amount of money in Birla Cellulosic, and out of 2 plants, only 1 plant was working, and 1 plant was still not even commissioned because they just didn't have the confidence of selling even the first line product from Birla Cellulosic and the second line, and therefore was not working. Mahur was on a verge of closure. So we were struggling big time. In fact, our utilization rates in pulp and fiber had hit almost 55–60%. And mind you, this was the cash cow of the ABG group. So I only understood much later why this business and its turnaround was so important for Mr. Birla. And I'll never forget the phrase he used when he was interviewing me, and he said, "Thomas, we have a fire and you have to help put it out." So the next few years were the biggest challenge of one of the biggest challenge of my professional life, of turning around the pulp and fiber business. And we were very fortunate. I was given the liberty of selecting a team. I'm happy to say that the team I selected in 1999 is the core team is still with pulp and fiber, and virtually I had only one person to start with, and I built the entire pulp and fiber marketing team. We did a lot of things. The key learning was turnarounds are possible. And for many of you who may not know, Mr. Birla had got BCG on because he was very concerned about the fortune of Grasim in the pulp and fiber business. And BCG at that time was with, was being headed by Arun Mehra, and Arun Mehra and team finally came back to us and Mr. Birla and Shailendra ji saying that, I think you should divest this business. You should exit while you still have some valuation. It is a historical decision that when Mr. Birla asked me, I said, no, Mr. Birla, we have a great possibility. We have a great future ahead of us. And within about 12 to 14 months, I had turned around the sales and we were running all our plants at full capacity. And of course, in the next couple of years, we started expanding capacity, not just in India, but globally. And we actually became the global #1 producers of viscose fiber. So it was, again, an example of what all we did to compete with polyester and take share, even though our prices were twice the price of polyester. We did a lot of innovative things. We did a lot of product development work. We created a lot of new concepts. We put customer sales and service as a priority. We improved customer experiences. We became a preferred supplier to the Indian spinning industry, the relevant Indian spinning industry. So it was a period of great learning. But what followed this was even more interesting. In 2003, it was not 4, 2003, Mr. Birla asked me to go to Harihar. Now, believe me, I had a lot of trepidation when I went to Harihar because I never worked in a plant, I never worked with large number of employees, and Harihar was at that time a very difficult proposition because I was privy to all the 4 years that I was sitting in on every review meeting with chairman, and I could only see bad news coming from Harihar in terms of labor and environment and quality. All three were under tremendous pressure. In fact, I had just closed Mahur a few years earlier, and the general feeling was that with industries in that Harihar Davangere area closing down, that Harihar would soon be on the list of closures. It turned out to be the greatest learning period of my life. And much as I may have had trepidations, I learned and I put my head down. I stayed in Harihar myself without my family, spent 4 years there, spent a lot of time trying to change things, and with the support of all the people in my team. And there were a lot of issues. There were cultural issues, there were communication issues, there were issues, huge issues of labor. We were able to turn around Harihar and make it into one of the best units that the Aditya Birla has even till date. Many of you may not know that Harihar is the only winner of the Platinum Award in Aditya Birla Group Indian operations. And in addition to that, Harihar complex, which comprises of pulp, fiber and plantations and clonal research, went on to become the highest highest in the Gallup manufacturing database worldwide. When we started the concept of OHS with the Gallup, we had an engagement score of 1:2.5, which was lower than the average of ABG at 1:4. When I left Harrier, we had reached 1:10. And I believe in the years later, they even managed to reach 1:12. This was an amazing turnaround of an old legacy plant. We were able to completely turn around the labor situation by reducing the number of people from close to 6,000 to about 2,500 to 2,800 by concurrently increasing productivity, quality, and of course, plant excellence. It was because of this focus and because of the turnaround and because of the huge engagement of the employees of Harrier that they went on to have these kind of scores on Gallup. Their stability and advocacy scores were in the 90s, which was unthinkable of at that time. And I think it really became a showpiece, a plant for the Aditya Birla Group, and it continues to be. During this period, I also had the opportunity, because Mr. Birla asked me to look at acquisition of the Chinese operations. We had been working for almost 3-4 years. We had signed 2 or 3 MOUs, but they all fell through. So in 2005, Mr. Birla asked me to go and do this along with Shailendra ji, and with the help of all my team members and people from the other plants, I was able to acquire Birla Jingwei in 2005-06. And that was my first experience of a cross-border acquisition, and it was a great learning experience. This was followed by setting up the Birla Laos plantation, which was a great experience because being the flagship company, Harrier Pulp was the flagship operation, our clonal research, our plantations, everything started from there. I was able to use all that knowledge able to acquire, with the help of Laos government, almost 20,000 hectares of land for plantation. This was again thought to be a kind of impossible kind of proposition, but we were able to do it, and a lot of effort was required. The final approval for the Birla Laos project came through the Parliament of Laos. We had the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, all the governors, all the cabinet ministers visiting Harrier, and we took care of them, and it was a wonderful experience of how by good networking and good international liaison you can actually create corporations. This then followed with my stint as the business head of Pulp, and chairman brought me back to Bombay, and I was then continuing to manage Harrier, but I started managing 2 plants in Canada and 1 plant in Laos, and of course this was the beginning of my international exposure. I used to spend a lot of time in Canada, and in one of the plants, it was a great learning experience of converting a paper grade plant to dissolving grade, which was AV Nakawik. Also, the learning of working in a different culture of North American culture was also a great learning experience for me on how to deal with, let's say, a North American management team vis-a-vis the way we deal with management teams elsewhere. Similarly, Laos was another extreme of dealing with employees and dealing with culture. And this really opened my eyes. And of course, the acquisition in China had given me a lot of depth of knowledge about the Chinese operation. So really, the pulp business, we did a lot of good work. We identified 2 companies to acquire. Later on, some of these companies did get acquired, and it was a period of great learning for me. And of course, the main exposure was to international operation. Then came one of the biggest changes in my life, that in 2008, Mr. Birla called me and he said that, look, you know, I think you should move to the retail business. Now, this was a big shocker to me because I had no experience of FMCG marketing. I had no experience of retail business. And I was very, very sure that this was an experience where I would definitely fail. And I told Mr. Birla that, you know, this seems to be set for failure. But he assured me that all the support would be forthcoming, and he had a lot of confidence in me. So then began my journey of retail. And this is the journey where I turned grey completely. I used to work 365 days a year. I used to work 14 to 16 hours, sometimes 17 hours a day. I did not take a single day break in that 4.5 years period that I worked with them. And I learned a lot. I think by putting in these 16 hours day, my 4 years would probably be the equivalent of 8-10 years of anyone else. I learned about retail. I was very fortunate. I was very privileged because I went on to become the chairman of CII's Retail Council, which I handled for 4 years. I became the chairman of the CII Marketing Council, which I handled for 3 years, and generally became the person who through CII got FDI into retail into India. So it was a period of great learning. I learned a new business, a very tough business. Probably the toughest business in the world to run is a food and grocery retail business. It was a low margin business, consumer facing business, which was hemorrhaging cash. But with my very talented team, we were able to turn things around, and we were coming into the range of EBITDA profitability when Mr. Birla took me out and said he would like me to come back to the textile business. This was in 2012 March. I immediately took charge of the Aditya Birla domestic textile business, which was followed subsequently within a year's time by taking over the acrylic fiber and the overseas spinning business at the retirement of Vikram Rao. So Vikram and I had a lot of time when we had this, handover, and it was a great experience to see what he had done. And for the last 9 years now, from 2012 till now, I've been managing the domestic textile, acrylic fiber and overseas spinning business. One of the greatest learning here has been about the importance of value-added products and about new product development and about managing international global operations, about ensuring that all the available management toolkits needed to be put into action to be able to come out and succeed in this business. It was also a period of great learning for me when we did the acquisition of Pyrotex. Was the first acquisition, a niche boutique business based out of Spain, and a company which was German. Then we did Soktas Turkey's plant in India, Kolhapur plant acquisition, and that then followed by the very premium SPL acquisition in Europe, which has 2 plants, one based in Germany in Kaiserslautern and one based in Levis, which is Pilatex in Slovakia. So this all acquisitions plus the focus on turning around these businesses, making them profitable in a very competitive space like textile has been a great and continued learning journey for me. Managing a cross-country culture, employees, sensitivity, developing sensitivities to their culture has been a part of the overall journey of learning. So, I have tried to capture this period of 39 years now in one slide. I know it is too much, but these have been the learnings for me from my experiences going forward. I was also very privileged when about 1.5 years back, Dr. Ram asked me that, we want you to chronicle your Harrier journey, leadership of transformation of Harrier for the ABG archives. And, I did not do anything, but my team of Sahil, Smriti, Atin and Anant, they worked very hard to put the story of Harrier's turnaround around. So there have been periods of great satisfaction and achievement, but one of the things which stands out is that it is full of stories of resilience, of perseverance and of learning. So, and last but not the least, that there is no substitute for hard work. So Debanshu, if you can move the slide, please. So I'm just, going to summarize this. So we focused on multiple roles, would work for long hours, rarely took breaks, worked on multi-functions to gain knowledge and exposure. So it is marketing, sales, strategy, manufacturing, supply chain, built lasting relationship with industry bodies, board members, associations, never shied away from accepting newer or challenging responsibilities. And one of the key things was always open to learning new things. So this really characterized the initial phase of my career. Next, please. The pulp and fiber business was at a very difficult time. As I explained to you, viscose was losing market share to polyester. The first task at hand was to create a robust marketing and sales function, to tirelessly engage with customers and to win back business by promoting the benefits of viscose over polyester and other competing fibers. And after a lot of hard work and numerous initiatives over the span of 4 years, the viscose business actually resurrected itself and started its growth journey, which has continued till today. In fact, many of you may not know that viscose, which was the written off fiber, has grown at almost 8 to 10% compounded annually during the last 2 decades as compared to polyester, which has grown only by 5 or 6% and even lower. So viscose was put on a complete reverse journey of growth during this period, and they have continued. The future stewards of the business have run it well, and it has continued to reach its full potential. Next. Some of the interesting things we did is we created the value creation engine in pulp and fiber. We created TRADC. So, you know, this is something I'd like to talk about. Creating Textile Research and Application Development Center, which would fuel the value creation work of pulp and fiber, was a great learning experience for me. I traveled around the world. I saw the facilities of Rieter in Germany and France. I saw the facilities of Sulzer in Europe, in Switzerland. I saw the facilities of DuPont in Wilmington, in Delaware. And by looking at all this, we conceived the project of TRADC, and probably it is the best textile research center in the world today. We introduced customer accreditation programs. We were the first to set up a marketing function separately. We firmly believe that viscose will thrive despite onslaught of polyester. In a period of 3 years, Grasim saw its realization double and profits quadrupled, and pulp and fiber cash reserves helped the group further in diversification, expansion, and foray into new ventures. Next. Next. I've already talked about this, but this is a good saying that either you can keep complaining about the situation or act to fix it. If you succeed, you can write a new chapter for the unit, and if you don't, the inevitable will happen and the unit will get closed down. So this was the kind of scenario I was looking at when I walked into Harrier in 2003. Next. So this was the kind of holistic efforts required at unit complex. The image on the left side is a plaque actually gifted to me by the principal of the school, by the principal, staff and students of the school. They very nicely and kindly put down the milestones achieved, and you'll see the milestones covered every aspect of organizational life. It was not restricted to the plant alone. It covered practically many other things, and I think this is really what helped me in gaining the love, affection, and everything that I did there was done with the help of people. Our strategic action plans, long-term plans, the complete turnaround of the business, the working with the labor and turning them into very positive, productive force, turning Harrier into virtually like a wildlife sanctuary, which was loved by the Pollution Control Board chairman. In fact, he was shocked when he saw it, because this was a company where complaints used to be lodged in the legislature of the house every day for years. And for us to turn it around into something which resembled a natural ecosystem. And the chairman of the Pollution Control Board from Delhi said that, I cannot believe that this unit can be harming the environment. It's only doing good for the environment. Next, please. So, it was a mix. I've already talked about it. It included, we built a water reservoir, which was a huge project, over several kilometers of space. It was a big project because it was next to a village and we had a lot of opposition. We cut down water load, we improved productivity. Like I said, it's the only company to win the prestigious Platinum WCM Award for manufacturing excellence. In terms of Gallup, like I told you, it was one of the best in Gallup's manufacturing global database. And of course, the Business Development Bureau rated Harrier Fiber as amongst the best fiber plants in the country. So a lot of work, a lot of achievements, primarily due to the efforts of the team members there. Next. I never thought that this would be possible in such a short span of 4 years. The unit which otherwise would have got closed got a fresh lease of life and has etched itself a name not only in the group but also in the community it operates, and at a global level as the most efficiently run operating pulp and fiber plants in the world. Next. Then I gave you a bit about the CO operations, which was acquisition of the plant in China, was a great learning experience. Negotiating and working with Chinese itself was a challenging task. Putting up the plantation project in Laos, which I told you was a daunting project. Operating in North America was a great learning experience for me, and managing overall a multi-geographic and multicultural workforce over basically 3 countries was the first beginning of a global oversight for me. Next. As I told you, retail was the turning point in my life of a completely new experience, and I learned the final learning for me was retail operation is all about details, and looking at an aggregate of retail operations would never work because every retail store has to become profitable and pay for itself. ABRL emerged as one of the top 3 retailers in India. I learned how to manage a consumer basic business profitability. We stopped the hemorrhaging of cash. It was a great learning experience. I can't even tell you the numbers because they were embarrassing, the amount of cash we were hemorrhaging, but we brought it down to very manageable levels, and I'm sure that we would have been headed for a good future. But it's a very difficult business, and that was my experience. And of course, at the end of my tenure in 2012, I also acquired diabetes, and I think that has stayed with me. And in a way, a less stressful job was in textiles, and I'm really grateful in a sense that I didn't carry on with this huge stressful job that I'd undertaken at a very crucial point in the company's history. Next. I think you all know about my textile oversight, so I'm not going to talk about it. So in addition to the 3 acquisitions, we also did, divestments. We divested Grasim Bhiwani Textiles in Bhiwani. Then we also divested the Alexandria Fiber Company in Alexandria in Egypt, which was also part of my watch list. We have done a number of expansions in Rishra from the time I arrived on the scene, and I think that has stood us in good stead. We continue to do a lot of new projects, and I think the acquisition of Soktas itself will be a very, very good turning point for the domestic textile business into global markets in the coming year. So this last 9 years also been a period of great learning, primarily geographical operations, etc. Next. The challenges were workmen unrest at Rishra, Bhiwani, linen fabric, stagnating demand, shrinking demand of acrylic fiber, margin contraction in OS spinning business, and pandemic in 2020 had the worst impact on all three businesses. But with the help of our wonderful teams and CEOs and CXOs, we've been able to stem the tide. And I would say that last year, despite the pandemic, all our businesses did the best that they could under the circumstances. Next paragraph. Next, please. So what did we do? We released cash by strict working capital control. In fact, the way textiles has managed the cash has been mentioned by chairman at every forum. He was very impressed with the way all the 3 businesses manage cash. We launched a new branding campaign for linen. We introduced linen apparel in a big way. So we really came into our own in linen apparel last year by getting it right. We've got into technical textile foray with SPL and Pyrotex, and of course, value creation as a way of life through VAP and NPD is something which we need to focus on. Next. So I'm coming to the literally the last slide, and this is a slide which is very close to my heart, and I would like to just tell you people that my 3 personal mantras, which I think are very, very important, will, if practiced well, can make you not just great leaders, can make you great human beings, and will help you in every walk of life. These are to be more mindful, to listen intently, and to suspend judgment. I can spend hours explaining each one of this to you, but I would say that you must look for examples of how you can be more mindful. Just to let you know that mindfulness covers a lot of behavior of ours. But most importantly, we need to be empathetic here. And listening intently, I don't know how many of you know that the spoken word is only about 15 or 20% of the communication. The balance 80% is non-verbal. Tone, tenor, emotional status of person, hand gestures. All of this we miss because we don't even concentrate on the 20% of the spoken word. Even then we are beginning to react. So listening intently is a great quality. In fact, one of the greatest qualities of man is to become a better listener and not to talk, to hear and to understand and to internalize. Last but not the least is suspending judgment. And I think this is easier said than done. I'm still struggling with it because from the time we are young, particularly in India, we learn to be very judgmental. We have an opinion about everything. We seem to thrive in an environment where we can give out opinions to all and sundry. But that's not the way we should be. We should never pass judgment until we have enough experiential learning of a person or a situation. And unless we do so in a very considered manner. So suspending judgment and learning more and more before coming to a conclusion is a very important quality. In fact, in the current era of Corona, which has disrupted and brought the entire globe to a standstill, practice of good leadership qualities will make us all bounce back faster and also make us stronger. So, friends, next slide, please. So, I would love to interact with all of you. I think I've finished exactly in less than 45 minutes. We have 15 minutes for Q&A or more. In fact, we probably have 20 minutes for Q&A. Watch slightly faster. So this is really what I wanted to share with you about my career journey in my life and my learnings over the period of time. But I must tell you that my final realization in these twilight years of my career of learning that we must be more mindful, we must be more intent listeners, and we must practice suspending judgment are in an essence the greatest learnings that I have acquired, apart from the fact that we must ensure that we practice the values that are dear to us, and more important that we must learn to communicate more effectively. So and last but not the least, there are no magic bullets. There is no silver lining unless you work hard. And my experience of my lifetime shows that there is nothing, no substitute for hard work in your life's journey. So thank you all for being patient listeners to me. I hope that what I had to share about my life and my career journey makes some sense to all of you. And I'm very happy to take any questions. I will try my best to respond to them and give you, in essence, any questions and my insights on those as we go on. Thank you. Over to you, Debanshu.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for your inspiring presentation and sharing of your journey of last 40 years. Well, we have started receiving questions, so I'm reading out the questions one at a time for you to respond to. So the first question, sir, you joined IOC at very young age in a senior position. This was kind of rare scenario in the 1990s. All your peers, reportees were very senior in age and more experienced. Can you please share how you managed to deal this situation and established yourself as a young and respected leader?
Can you tell me whom the questions are coming from? So it'll be nice to know.
It has come from Prasanna.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you, Prasanna, because you were a part of that journey. You, like many others, you, Ashwini, I mean, there are hundreds of people in the group. You are right. When I joined, and later on we recruited all of you, you were management trainees at that time. And it was a great experience because, like I said, IOC was a very innovative company and it had a tremendous background of textile. And the secret to how I became successful, Prasanna, really lies in that 8 years I spent learning different things and spent putting in those extra hours to go way beyond the learning of what an 8-year experience can teach me. So again, I would say that 8 years were probably the equivalent of 16 years for me in DCM Limited. And similarly, the 6 years in IOC, you know how hard we used to work, but probably the equivalent of a 12, 13 years anywhere else. So I think there were no substitute to learning. There's no substitute to hard work. But more than that is the ability to keep yourself open to learning. I was dealing with people who are far more experienced, people who had far more knowledge. So I, instead of challenging them, learned from them. And in a sense became able to guide them to do better and to achieve much more than what they thought they themselves could achieve. You know, the entire team of Pulp and Fiber business virtually came from IOC. I brought them with me and I am so proud of what each one of them has been able to achieve, including you, Prasanna. So I think, you know, it was a great period of my life, a very challenging period of my life, but it also gave me enduring friendship and relationships. Manohar Samuel was a person whom I carried across 4 companies. Prasanna, I mean, the list is endless in ABG Group of people who are there. Ashwini, I mean, there are so many people. So I hope I've been able to answer the question, Prasanna. Basically, it is working with an open mind, learning and working hard and working in a very congenial atmosphere with my colleagues. Many of them were senior. My peers, of course, were super senior to me. Most of them were 54, 55, 56. And you know, when I was a member of the executive board with them for running of IOC, it was a very big privilege, but it was also a very big challenge. But it was a great learning experience. Thank you, Prasanna. Yeah, next question.
The next question by Abhishek Priyadarshi. Thanks a lot, Thomas, for sharing your professional journey from experience. Need to know about any major failure during your 39 years of journey and your learning about or from the same.
Oh yeah, there have been many failures. I mean, life is not a bed of roses. I would say the fact that we could not put IOC on a path of great growth can be deemed as a failure, though it happened almost a decade later after I left the company. The fact that we could not capitalize on being the first recycled polyester PET manufacturer, I think could have been leveraged much better. The fact that we were the first PET bottle producers in the world and we could not leverage it. The fact that we were not able to continue running Alexandria Fiber Company in Egypt while we had a gateway to Europe for a variety of reasons, but most of all due to a choice of wrong technology and an acquisition of a very old FISIP plant, which only gave us headaches from day one, which happened during Ratan Shah and Mr. Deepak Mittal's watch, but the company suffered eventually. So there are many learnings. The fact that we could not put GBTL on the path of success and we could not bring out, it was more than a 50, 60-year-old unit on the path of sustained profitability will all count as possible failures in my book. The fact that we are still struggling, we are not able to grow the linen or the wool business or the TAF business to the extent that we should be able to grow it are all failures down the way. So it's not been success all along. So I think there's a lot of learning, and most importantly is the acknowledgement of the fact that we know where we are deficient and to work towards improving ourselves there. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Abhishek. Thank you.
The next question by Atul. can you please elaborate a little more on suspending judgment?
Yeah, so I think, you will see that, when you're sitting with your friends or you're sitting in a family or you're sitting with colleagues, any points of discussions come up. It could be political, it could be maybe it could be your boss, it could be a lot of things which is happening around you. It could be also in a family situation. You will see that because of the way we've been brought up, we tend to have very strong opinions on a lot of things. Like for instance, on political events. What do we know about politics? What do we know about what is happening in the political parties? But we still have a very strong opinion on them. And this is true for all walks of life. We have an opinion of about what happened between Biden and what happened between Trump. We have an opinion of what is happening in Russia with Putin. What do we really know about these things? We don't know anything at all. We're not even experiencing that environment, but we have an opinion. So suspending judgment is really telling you that until and unless you have experiential learning or enough exposure to an issue, you should refrain from passing judgment. So it is a refrain from passing judgment is the definition of the word suspending judgment. And what happens is that it is very human. And like I told you, it is the most difficult thing for us to train ourselves on. We have prejudices. We have biases in our mind. Let us take a simple example. Women on the shop floor in Vishra plant. There are enough and more officers who have strong reservations against it. But it's slowly happening today. If, let's say, somebody has given a judgment saying it's not possible, then if that avenue is closed. I'm just giving an example to prove a point, basically. So suspending judgment is a very, very important quality. I hope, Atul, my explanation makes some sense to you. Thank you. Next.
The next question, the name has not been disclosed.
Yeah.
But the question is, what were your observations and learnings from those dealing with the Chinese?
Very good question. I did not elaborate this, but I've been traveling to China since 1992. So I have an experience, and between 92 to 2008 or so, I was traveling almost every year and sometimes several times a year. I have great admiration for the Chinese people. I think many times in India, we say that we can become the next China. I doubt it very much. I doubt if we can ever become the next China, because we just don't have the discipline. We don't have that single-minded focus to create a nation the way the Chinese have created a nation. Every time I landed in China, it was an eye-opener to me. I was seeing a new China. 92. I was met by Green Beret Chinese people, army, police or army with carrying RKX-10 guns, 1992. By 94, there were no signs of these army guys. By 96, I was going into airports which are 10 times or 20 times the size of Indian airports. And when I did the acquisition in 2005 and 6, I traveled the length and breadth of China. Almost 10 months, I was traveling every month to the length and breadth of China. So the normal comment by Indian leaders saying China is all about Beijing, Shanghai and Qingdao or Guangzhou was far from true. China had developed in the entire hinterlands. They had concrete roads connecting every part of the provinces. They had developed huge in infrastructure. We were nowhere by comparison. So what I learned in China is mega size operations. What did I learn about the Chinese people? Frankly, they are amongst the most clever people in the world. And I must give you an anecdote here. I had gone for a strategic exercise to University of Wilmington in Delaware, University of Wilmington. It was organized by DuPont. I think it was 2000. No, it was 19. Sorry, it was not 2000. It was 97, 98. And people from every part of the world as part of that few months program. And I was in a team, and we were competing with another team which had a Chinese girl in it. And we thought we'll win the contest. We never won the contest. The Chinese girl and her team won the contest. And I realized how bright the Chinese really are. And when we were negotiating for the deal for Birla Jingwei, I realized how clever the Chinese are in negotiating. And that is why all the previous attempts fell through. So I think there's a lot we can learn from the Chinese. And of course, in the last many years, when we had been dealing with our Chinese counterparts in both linen and wool, I have learned how swift and agile they are to change themselves, to improve their productivity, to cut their costs, to improve their quality. In fact, I think Prasanna will remember, and many of the others who were with me in fiber business, that in the 90s and the early 2000s, nobody thought that Chinese viscose fiber is of any good quality. In fact, they used to mix pulp and make viscose fiber, and it was considered to be very inferior quality. Look where they have come today. They produce amongst the best quality fibers in the world. And their operations in their plants are amongst the most efficient. So I think, and we started putting Chinese technology in our plants, shifting it from both our own technology and European technology because of the high level of productivity and robustness that some of their engineering plants delivered to us. So I think there's a lot we can learn from China, and I can tell you I'm still learning from them. And I think they have a lot to teach the rest of the world. I'm talking about the positive things. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Next question.
I think we have time for one or two more questions, and then we need to.
Right. Next question is related to, in fact, the name has not been disclosed. So it says, while learning is fun and joyful when you're young, how do you continue with the same zeal even at this age?
I think it's an attitude, frankly. It is an attitude which you should inculcate and you should have. Sometimes may be difficult. For instance, now, in the last couple of years, we are thrown into an era of digitization. We are thrown into an era of virtual faceless meetings. We are thrown into a virtual world. Now, if we have to succeed in this world, we have to learn and adapt. There is no option for us. So the speed and agility at which you can learn and adapt, in a sense, will define your success. And it all depends upon how passionate you are about what you do. So if you're very passionate, you will make the effort to learn. I agree with you, it will be more and more difficult as time passes, but it's not impossible. And I think if you are passionate and if you're committed to your work, you will make that effort to learn new things, new skill sets, and change with the times, with speed and agility. I hope that answers your question.
The next question, anonymous, once again, what is it that you look for when you select team members? What combination in terms of domain knowledge, attitude, etc.?
Actually, it's a very good question, because I believe very strongly that the screening at the time of intake of talent acquisition is probably one of the least focused on, but one of the most important elements of inducting good talent into your company or your corporation. So all of you who work with me know that even if you're taking a person at L1, L2, L3 sometimes, I insist on seeing the people myself, because I think it's important to ensure that we don't make mistakes at this very, very important initiative of talent acquisition to the corporation. What do I look for? I think domain knowledge is hygiene. And by and large, the screening team would have done their job in getting the right people with the right skill sets. I think very important is to understand the attitude, mental mindset, and behavior of the person. I think if you get a person with a negative mindset or who's just not open to learning or open to new things or open to change, you would probably end up with a misfit in the organization. So attitude, behavior, culture, teamwork, ability to go beyond, walk the extra mile. These are all the things you look for, and the passion, because many times you can see from what the people come across to you in a 45 minutes or an hour's interview, you can see the passion that drives them. So I would look for people with a great attitude and passion. And of course, domain knowledge being hygiene. So I hope that answers the question of the anonymous person. I think maybe one quick question and we should end. Yes. Because
right. Sure.
I think an interesting question. Right.
Right. So the last question, a rather interesting one. How do you keep yourself balanced under tough situations?
I think this is a very great question, and it has taken me many years to sort of even understand it myself. There was a time when I was younger, I used to get very agitated and I used to be very impatient. And that impatience has remained with me, but my express behavior now has changed a lot, because I feel that, you know, many times it is very difficult for us to understand why things don't happen or don't get done. And I think it's very important for us to understand the root causes of that. And that has helped me develop a bit of patience. Of course, people sometimes feel I'm very patient with underperformance. Actually, I'm not, but I give people a lot of opportunity to deliver and to improve themselves. So I think it's been an evolution from being very, very impatient to becoming patient, from being very judgmental to becoming less judgmental, from being a person who at some stages in my life felt that I should do everything on my own, to learning to delegate and empower people and support them. And I think that's been the greatest journey for me. The last 10, 15 years of my life, I have trusted my teams and I've trusted my CXOs to deliver, and I've supported them to the hilt. And I think that's been a very big change in the way I've worked. I mean, people like Prasanna who have seen me working for the last 30 years will know how I have changed over the years, or Ashwini, or any of these people who worked with me for a number of years. As extremely, I was always keen to deliver. I was always keen for results. I was pushing people all the time, but I've changed a lot in that sense. But I'm still strong for accountability, for ensuring that people deliver, but my behavior with them has changed a lot. So I think I've gotten older and maybe a little wiser over time. So I hope that answers the question. So I'd like to thank you all for a very patient listening. I hope it has been of some value to each one of you in your own life's journeys. Thank you so much. Over to you, Debanshu.
Thank you so much, Thomas, once again. It was really an interesting and engrossing session of an hour or so. Well, our dear friends, before you leave the meeting, we shall also request you to share your feedback.
I think you've gone off the call.
Sorry.
No, Debanshu, you're live.
Yeah, right. So thank you, Thomas, once again. We are grateful to you for sparing an hour with us, sharing your journey of not only ABG, but your entire career spanning across 40 years. And before we leave the meeting, this session, I shall request our dear participants, colleagues, to share their feedback about what they liked and even what they did not in terms of coordination and running the show. So with this, we are bringing to closure this session of ours. Thank you, Dhanyavad.